May 31st, 2007, Walton-on-Thames, Surrey. In this quiet English town, Kate Beagley was reported missing. She never showed up for work. Her phone was silent. No one had heard from her. Knowing his daughter had gone out the night before, Kate's father drove to her home to check. But the apartment was empty. When she failed to appear at an important meeting, he knew this was completely out of character and immediately contacted police. The disappearance sent shockwaves through the community. Friends and family began searching, posting flyers everywhere and pleading for anyone with information to come forward. They even created a Facebook group, at a time when the platform was still relatively new, to share updates and hunt for clues. Just hours before she vanished, Kate, a successful, vibrant, and beautiful young woman, had agreed to meet a man she'd only recently met. What seemed like an ordinary night would become the beginning of a nightmare. In Box Hill, the lush green hills south of London, the night was hiding a dark secret. And only when the name Karl Taylor emerged did the truth begin to unfold. Behind that charming smile lurked a deadly plan. The cost of misplaced trust was 29 stab wounds. This is the story of a date that turned into hell, of a cold-blooded killer, and the long road to justice for Kate Beagley. At 32 years old, Kate Beagley was described as loyal, vibrant, and always smiling. Friends said she was the kind of person you could count on any time you needed. She had a wide circle of friends, loved adventure, was passionate about travel, and was known for both her intelligence and absolute reliability. Most notably, Kate never left home without letting someone know her plans. Walton-on-Thames was usually a peaceful town, but it carried the lingering shadow of a notorious case: murder of Millie Dowler. In March 2002, Millie, a 13-year-old schoolgirl, was abducted in Walton. Her body was found months later, and the tragedy shocked the entire nation. The hunt for her killer dominated headlines for years. When the murderer was finally identified, he was already serving prison time for 2 other murders and an attempted murder. On June 23, 2011, Levi Belfield was convicted of kidnapping and murdering Millie Dowler, receiving an additional whole life sentence without parole. At the time Kate Beagley disappeared, the killer of Millie Dowler had yet to face trial. The pressure on the police was immense. They had to calm a panicked public while racing against time to find answers amid growing fear. Then, something strange happened. Kate's friends started receiving text messages from her own phone number, but almost immediately, they knew something was off. The way the messages were written, the choice of words. It was unfamiliar. This was not Kate. During a search of her home, police found another phone. The missing persons unit scoured the contacts list and called one of the numbers. That clue led them to a mysterious man, someone Kate had met on the very night she disappeared. His name was Karl. Kate's friends only knew they had met at a club in central London a few weeks prior, and that Kate might have left with him after their date. But her family refused to believe it. So, who was Karl? His full name was Karl Taylor, living alone in a 1-bedroom flat in Covent Garden for nearly 8 years. He had a criminal record, but at first his file revealed nothing seriously alarming. In February 2002, Karl was convicted of fraud and embezzlement. That same year, he attempted to take his own life by jumping off a bridge, only stopping when someone intervened just in time. His mother pleaded with him to seek help, and Karl did speak with doctors about his mental health struggles. From the phone seized at Kate's home, police uncovered a chain of text messages between them, including plans to meet at a specific location. In missing persons cases, The first few hours are critical for gathering evidence, and the police knew they had nothing to lose by calling Karl directly. Unexpectedly, he answered. Karl claimed that Kate had met up with him and then took him to Twickenham. He said he caught a bus home afterward and hadn't seen her since. But something about his story didn't add up. When police reached out to Karl's mother, she revealed that in the early morning of May 31st, the very day Kate was reported missing, Karl returned home driving a strange Volkswagen Golf. She also noticed him meticulously cleaning the car. During questioning, Karl explained that the car belonged to a woman who lent it to him so he could take her child to school. But that was completely false. The Volkswagen Golf was Kate's, abandoned while she disappeared without a trace. If Karl was telling the truth, that Kate dropped him off and they never saw each other again, then why did he have her car? And if there was an innocent explanation, why didn't he say it from the start? As detectives followed the trail, they discovered Karl Taylor not only kept Kate's car, but also possessed many of her belongings. At 5:45 a.m., Karl suddenly handed his mother a stack of receipts, but they weren't his. These receipts were taken from the glove compartment of Kate's car. It didn't stop there. Karl bragged to friends about his new car and even sold a phone, later confirmed to be Kate's, to an acquaintance. A key lead took police to information that just before midnight on May 30th, Kate's car was spotted crossing Chiswick Bridge in the opposite direction. The driver's suspicious behavior caught the attention of a police officer, who ran a check on the national system. Hour by hour, suspicion grew stronger. The picture became clearer. Something terrible had happened to Kate. Karl Taylor, 27, was a fitness trainer, football coach, and martial arts practitioner, more than capable of overpowering Kate with ease. Believing they needed to hear Karl's explanation, the police brought him in for questioning. If this was just a misunderstanding, this was his chance to clear things up. But there was a problem. The man who had answered the phone earlier that morning was now silent, refusing to talk. Since calls from the police often don't show caller ID, Karl likely recognized it was law enforcement. To break the deadlock, detectives tried calling from personal numbers. This time, Karl answered, but remained vague, avoiding any new details. Feeling the need for a direct confrontation, two officers decided to meet him in London. Surprisingly, Karl invited them to an evening party at an apartment in Holland Park. A strange invitation. The woman he had just dated was missing. He was driving her car without explanation, yet acted as if everything was perfectly normal. When the police arrived, they pulled Karl aside into a private room to question him. But even face-to-face, he evaded, offering no real answers. Guests kept arriving. Music and laughter filled the space, creating a noisy, chaotic atmosphere, far from the serious setting of an investigation. Karl began to get agitated, raising concerns for his own safety among the officers. Finally, they decided to arrest Karl and take him back to Walton-on-Thames. But police were still concerned Karl might react violently. To ensure safety, the Metropolitan Police were called in to support, prepared for any escalation. Before the backup arrived, a clever detective sergeant created a pretext to lure Karl out of the noisy room and down to the car parked below. Karl didn't suspect a thing and happily followed, until handcuffs snapped tightly around his wrists. He was arrested on suspicion of abducting Kate Beagley and immediately escorted back to Walton-on-Thames. The case was then handed over to the Serious Crime Unit, led by Chief Inspector Mark Preston. Time was of the essence. If they wanted to find Kate alive, Karl had to be interrogated immediately. However, despite being in custody, Karl's story didn't change. With Kate still missing and completely out of contact, the police upgraded the charge to suspicion of murder. During the next interrogation, Karl coldly refused to cooperate, answering every question with only 2 words. No comment. The judge allowed an extension of his detention, but Karl's silence remained absolute. He did not explain why he was driving Kate's car, nor why he appeared on CCTV refueling it. Strangely, he only pumped exactly 1 pound of gas, a move both unusual and suspicious. The pieces hadn't yet formed a complete picture, but the dark tones were becoming clear. With mounting evidence tightening the net, Karl was sent back to his cell, left alone to face the storm ahead. It was Sunday night. Karl was allowed to speak to his mother on the phone again. Shortly after, he was scheduled for another interrogation. Detective Chief Inspector Mark Preston, after more than 24 sleepless hours, finally decided to go home and rest. But just as he laid his head down, his phone rang. On the other end was the station, and the news jolted him awake immediately. Karl Taylor had confessed. He not only admitted to killing Kate Beagley, but also agreed to lead police to the location where he had hidden her body. Karl's confession was both chilling and grotesque. He claimed his motive was simply to steal Kate's car. When she resisted, he turned violent. "She pushed me away," Karl recounted coldly. He stated that when Kate reached toward him, he stabbed her straight in the throat. And when she tried to strike his face, he slashed her neck repeatedly. Police didn't believe it. Karl was tall, strong, and trained in martial arts. He could have overpowered Kate without using a knife. His account was blatantly implausible. In his confession, Karl revealed he had dumped Kate's body near Watford, Hertfordshire. Police immediately contacted the Hertfordshire Constabulary for support. The case escalated into a large-scale operation. Due to the severity of the crime and Karl's deceptive nature, officers recorded the entire trip as they escorted him to the scene, both to gather evidence and to ensure he had no chance of escape. Late at night, the journey to Watford began. Karl Taylor sat in the car, flanked by officers, leading them to where he claimed he had hidden the body. Yet in their minds, doubt still lingered. Could this be another dead end? Karl directed them to the Oxhey Woods car park, a nature reserve usually peaceful, now swallowed by a darkness so thick they could barely see their own hands. He stepped out of the car, coldly pointing toward a patch of stinging nettles. One officer quietly circled behind, avoiding any paths Karl might have taken. And then, the grim truth emerged. At around 3 a.m., the naked body of Kate Beagley was found. The area was immediately sealed off. Investigators began their painstaking and emotional work, collecting every fragment of evidence. Kate's family, Alan and Claire, along with her brother Guy, released a heartbreaking statement. Kate was thoughtful, reliable, loyal. A beloved daughter, sister, niece, godmother, and friend. "Not a day goes by without us thinking of her," they wrote. The loss rippled through the entire community. Locals gathered at the scene, leaving flowers and heartfelt notes. One read, "I never met you, but it feels like I've known you all my life. My condolences and prayers to all whose lives you touched with your love." Another simply said, "Without you, this place hurts more." Kate's body bore severe injuries. The heat and prolonged exposure had caused decomposition to set in. forcing police to rely on DNA testing for formal identification. That night, the horrific truth began to emerge. Kate's clothes had been removed, her body washed. In a chilling statement, Karl said he did it to purify her heart and let the stars shine upon her. The initial crime scene offered nothing but the body. The murder weapon and Kate's belongings had vanished without a trace. Only later did police learn Karl had thrown the knife out of the car on the motorway shortly after dumping her body. Incredibly, they still managed to recover the blood-stained knife, along with several of Kate's clothes. Even the water bottle she kept in her car was found. Some of its contents had been used to wash the victim. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood on the knife belonged to Kate. Police suspected her car might hold vital evidence, and Karl agreed to lead them to it. As he claimed, the vehicle was found in a residential area in Hounslow, London. The autopsy revealed shocking brutality. Kate had been stabbed more than 30 times in the head, face, and neck. The confirmation of her death shattered her family and friends. The loss was already unbearable, but the sheer violence she suffered made it far worse. After a period of silence, Karl finally spoke. He led police to the Richmond Hill pub, the spot where he and Kate had their first date. Across the road was a small seating area where Karl admitted he had attacked Kate. Following that trail, police discovered blood stains smeared on the pavement, steps, and even the railings. Forensic tests confirmed it was Kate's blood. With such overwhelming evidence, Karl Taylor was formally charged with murder. Despite his initial confession and the mountain of physical evidence, Karl stubbornly denied the charges. He changed his story, claiming he acted in self-defense, even suggesting Kate had taken her own life. To strengthen the case, detectives returned to the nature reserve, the place where Kate's body was found, hoping to uncover additional clues. Suspecting a sexual element to the crime, they collected and tested over 100 used condoms scattered throughout the area. The results: not a single sample contained DNA from Karl or Kate. A far more disturbing revelation came later. While in prison, Karl had befriended Levi Belfield, the convicted murderer of Millie Dowler. He also became close to Mark Dixie, another notorious killer. According to Laura Richards, former head of Scotland Yard's Homicide Prevention Unit, inmates like these often share tactics for manipulating the system before trial. Richards revealed that Belfield and Dixie had developed an unusual friendship while housed in adjacent cells at Belmarsh Prison. Karl quickly became part of this circle. The three killers began exchanging strategies with prison psychologists, seeking ways to influence their trial outcomes. Ironically, all three would face justice at the Old Bailey, the historic court famous for trying Britain's most horrific crimes, within mere weeks of each other. Now, it was Karl Taylor's turn to face his final showdown with justice. The courtroom was packed that day. Everyone waited for the moment when the truth would be revealed and the case would finally close. Yet, despite the clear evidence and his earlier confession, Karl Taylor stubbornly refused to plead guilty. The prosecution reminded the court Karl had once admitted to killing Kate Beagley, and forensic evidence had reinforced that confession. A police officer testified that the two first met at the CC Club in Piccadilly, London, on May 18th. 2 weeks later, they arranged to meet at a bar on Richmond Hill, but during that date, Kate seemed almost completely disengaged. She was focused on her phone, texting constantly, barely speaking. When they left the bar, her eyes remained glued to the screen. The two walked toward a bench overlooking the cliff's edge. Kate had no idea that Karl had a pair of scissors and a multi-tool knife hidden in his sleeve. In court, Karl spun a story that Kate was a good person, but was suffering an emotional crisis and wanted to end her life. He claimed he tried to stop her, yet the wounds were far too severe for Kate to have inflicted on herself without losing consciousness almost instantly. To counter his claims, the prosecutor handed Karl a rolled-up piece of paper, mimicking a knife, and asked him to demonstrate how Kate could stab herself more than 30 times in the head, face, and neck. Karl refused. Judge Giles Forrester immediately reminded him that he did not control the proceedings and was bound to follow the law. Many described Karl's explanation as absurd and disgraceful. Taking the stand, Karl said, "She stabbed herself in the neck and pulled her own hair at the same time. I just stood there, shocked. I couldn't stop crying." He then dragged Kate's body into his car, later caught on security cameras driving to a gas station, buying exactly 1 pound of fuel, while Kate's body remained in the trunk. The trial grew heavier when the prosecutor revealed a letter Karl Taylor had written from his cell at Stane Police Station, addressed to Kate's family. It began coldly. "Hello, my name is Karl. I'm the one who met your daughter on Friday night." Karl wrote that his first impression of Kate was a kind but sad girl, and that in the short time they knew each other, he saw her as an angel in the darkness. He described Kate as shining like a star in the night sky, and brazenly wrote, "Even though I took your daughter's life, her heart still beats for the good things." In the letter, Karl slipped in poetic-sounding lines that many saw as manipulative, an attempt to soften the brutality of his crime. He wrote about angels being called back to heaven and questioned himself, "Whose life did I really take?" A remark that made many in the courtroom's blood boil. Karl ended the letter with a cryptic metaphor. "If you remember her, look up at a star. She hasn't lost you, and you haven't lost her. Sometimes, no matter how gently you touch a flower, it still won't bloom." But to Kate's family, those words were nothing more than a carefully staged performance by a killer trying to paint himself as a tragic figure rather than the cold-blooded murderer he was. The letter, dripping with poetic language yet steeped in emotional manipulation, was never delivered to Kate's family. Investigators believed that if they read it, their grief would only be ripped open even deeper. It took the jury less than 2 hours to reach a unanimous verdict. Karl Taylor was guilty of murder. As the decision was read aloud, the courtroom erupted in cheers and sighs of relief. The sentence: life in prison, with a minimum of 30 years before eligibility for parole. In his sentencing remarks, Judge Giles Forrester stared directly at the defendant. "This was a killing for gain. You went to see her with a knife in your hand, while all she wanted was friendship. You exploited her vulnerability to pursue your selfish ends." Karl interrupted. "Sir, I didn't do that." But the judge pressed on. "You carried that knife intending to use it, keeping it hidden. You then callously disposed of her body. You are arrogant, deceitful, and extremely dangerous, posing a serious threat to others." Outside the courthouse, Kate's father delivered a tearful speech. The trial concluded with praise for the 7 detectives from Surrey Police and a crime analyst from the Metropolitan Police for their dedication and tireless efforts. Deputy Chief Constable Craig Denholm acknowledged the complexity of the case, involving 3 police jurisdictions and multiple crime scenes. He emphasized that the verdict and sentence were the direct result of outstanding cooperation between agencies, and he concluded, "The level of violence Kate suffered in her final moments has imposed a life sentence on her family and loved ones." Kate's father, Alan Beagley, choked up in front of the cameras. I still feel empty and cold, and I know that feeling will never go away. Kate was full of life, vibrant. I can't stop thinking about what went through her mind during those horrific final moments. The fear, the confusion, must have been unimaginable. He paused, his eyes glistening with tears. This brutal and senseless act has left a permanent scar on all of us. My wife, Claire, is completely shattered. She finds no peace anywhere. She says her whole life now feels like nothing but emptiness. Kate Beagley's life ended in tragedy, and her killer, Karl Taylor, will spend at least 30 years behind bars. But the pain her family carries will last a lifetime. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. I've prepared many more true crime cases that you definitely won't want to miss.